Blockbuster, the workplace sitcom about the real-world video store franchise that got shut down because of streaming services like Netflix, recently dropped on Netflix. And as is the case with a lot of these Netflix-only shows, Blockbuster was bound to be either a raging success or a failure that you'd never hear about again. For me, Blockbuster defied both these expectations, leaving me shocked and dumbfounded by being mediocre. But to me, the issues that the series has are some that have been plaguing most modern sitcoms in general. Let's discuss. Blockbuster follows Timmy, the childlike but caring manager of the now final Blockbuster on the planet, as he has to learn how to manage his business despite the difficulties of not having corporate backing. Helping him are his sweet but quirky employees: Eliza, the smart but cocky overqualified one; Carlos, the struggling student aspiring to be a director; Connie, the random wacky older character; Hannah, the innocent dumb blonde; and Kayla, the mean, sassy Gen Zer. The key word with these characters is quirky. Blockbuster falls into one of the biggest weaknesses a sitcom can have, what I like to call an over-reliance on quirk. For you see, all of Blockbuster's characters, every single one, including the non-important side characters, are quirky as fuck. It's practically all they are. Our introduction to the series and our first time meeting all of them establishes that abundance of quirk from the get-go. The way we're introduced to these characters serves to highlight the main traits that will define them for the rest of the series in an extremely direct and to-the-point way. We open on Timmy, talking to a customer who hasn't shown up in ages because he's been using Netflix. Timmy is sweet but awkward, tossing movie references around with boyish charm. As the customer explains that his girlfriend dumped him for a pastry chef, Eliza interjects with a yikes and a comment, displaying her to-the-point, honest but critical attitude. Then Hannah bounces off the pastry chef thing to innocently comment on the overpriced nature of croissants, displaying her dumb naivete, which Eliza eagerly jumps upon by critiquing the obvious fact that Hannah is focusing on the wrong thing regarding the situation. Kayla steps in to diss Eliza's hair because she is clearly the mean, self-absorbed teenager who does nothing but text. But then
Carlos rushes in, recommending the customer a bunch of great movies and showing off his movie lover/aspiring director persona. However, Connie cuts him off to suggest a movie by describing it very vaguely and messing up the actors' names, quirkily replying to her coworkers when they correct her. 2 minutes in,
and we know everything there is to know about these characters, and I personally start getting the sense that the writers are trying way too hard to make these characters memorable a la Quirkiness. But it is way too much. Quirks and gimmicks are a crucial part of any sitcom, as the driving force of long-spanning shows like these needs to be their characters. I haven't seen a single traditional comedy that forgoes this, and I'm not saying they should either. However, most successful comedies give their characters a bit more depth beyond just the quirkiness. They give them a well-rounded personality that viewers grow to know and to like. We tend to get attached to sitcom characters, as most American sitcoms span many episodes and get you used to tuning into these characters' hijinks and adventures. You usually see them in so many situations that they become familiar to you, like a friend or a family member you see on a daily basis. For that reason, it's crucial that these characters actually have a personality beyond being just quirky for the lulz. In some instances, sitcom characters are not well written, but they are instead well performed, and thus are given extra dimensions by their actors, who make them realer and more consistent for us viewers. And so, for me, the key to a sitcom's long-term success is interesting, well-developed, usually lovable characters. And though comedies in general tend to make a habit of sacrificing character traits at times for a quick joke or laugh, the main outline of that character remains true throughout. The issue with Blockbuster is that it only provides a very bare-bones outline of each of its characters. Throughout the show, characters fade and blend in together, and it becomes hard to distinguish their personalities in general, save through their identifiable quirks or particularly tropey traits. All except Timmy and maybe Eliza fail to make enough of an impact to be memorable as realistic, fully fleshed out characters, but rather only embed themselves in our minds for their quirks. Another show that I thought suffered from these issues in recent memory is How I Met Your Father, particularly with the over-quirkiness. It seems that sitcoms like these are so intent on capturing the magic of the past that they try to force it. They try to force witty dialogue and humorous, character-driven situations. They try to force characters that they think will be memorable or that the audience will like, but it comes off like they're trying too hard, and we end up with tropey, bare-bones characters that mimic great characters that come from shows before them, but without any of the substance. In Blockbuster, Timmy, and Eliza to a small degree, only manage to evade this predicament by having more screen time than the rest. It gives us more time to see them talk and do stuff, and put themselves in more situations, until we get to a point where we can successfully regard them as their own individual characters. Their will they won't they romance takes center stage in the show in general, being one of its main overarching plots. But what the time spent on Timmy and Eliza's romance does for them ends up taking away from other characters. And we segue into another problem I think modern sitcoms insist on having: forced romance. I frankly think this show is too short to have warranted this heavy of a focus on romance. While most traditional sitcoms have an element of romance to them, this romance doesn't always need to necessarily be present right from the start. It is set up from the beginning, but it doesn't take such center stage straight away unless we're sliding into rom-com territory. If it does make itself abundantly present right away, it is in shows that have enough time to handle it. Blockbuster does not, with its 10, 26 to 28-minute episodes. It provides a sweet story, but at the cost of making its comedic presence be felt, and at the cost of making its cast of side characters be developed enough to be truly memorable and likable. I don't think that the romance is bad per se. It isn't. It's cute and wholesome, and plays a big part in telling us about both Timmy and Eliza, and it adds a mildly interesting layer to the show. However, I believe the show would have benefited greatly from reducing from the romance's priority and instead work to flesh out the humor and the characters more. It just feels like these writers who are part of these big sitcom productions don't care about the content they're writing enough to make it really hit. It just feels like they're pursuing a quick buck with these smaller, simpler shows that they know are more likely to be appealing to a wider audience. And you can really feel when things like these lack passion and heart, because they end up like Blockbuster or even worse. Maybe Blockbuster isn't the best example of this complete and utter lack of passion, because at the end of the day it still manages to be at the least mediocre. Mediocre and completely unexceptional. It's not bad, but it isn't good either. It can be a decent switch your brain off time, but it wasn't enough to win me over enough to want to see more, except for the purposes of making this video, and left me without much excitement for a future season. And I think nowadays we've gone on making do with mediocrity in comedy for too long. I consider myself to be a big sitcom person, so it really hurts that I can never find any modern ones that can fill that hole anymore. The hole left behind by greats like How I Met Your Mother, like Community, like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and like, dare I say it, The Big Bang Theory. But anyways, if you've made it this far into the video, I just want to thank you, truly, sincerely, and from the bottom of my heart. I truly appreciate you for listening to me blabber on for a few minutes. It honestly means a lot. If you liked the video and want to see more video essays, reviews, and debatably terrible opinions, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and maybe subscribed. Take care, and I'll hopefully see you soon. Goodbye.